little boxes that are the recordings someplace else, like in the second page, so I don't see it? My screen's kind of confusing.
Good morning, Sarahni. I'm not sure if that's possible. What we can do is ask the students to open their camera. That way they will go to the first page.
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 5 a.m. my time in. I'm just a little discombobulated here. Okay, so I always begin my classes the same way, and it goes like this. Bring your attention to your breath, please, until you hear from me again. Now bring to mind a being, living or not, mythical or real, who for you is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom. And see them appear there with you just by way of your thinking of them. See them gazing at you with their unconditional love for you. See them smiling at you with their holy great compassion. You can see that there's a golden light of their wisdom radiating from them. It encompasses you in its light. It feels so wonderful to have them here with us. And then we hear them say, bring to mind someone you know who's hurting in some way. Think think about how much you would like to be able to help them? Sometimes the way we help seems to help, and sometimes it doesn't. And even when it does, they seem to always go on to have some other kind of distress. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could also help them in some deep and ultimate way? A way through which they could go on to stop their distress forever. This tradition says it's possible. And so I invite you to grow that wish. To grow it even into a longing, perhaps then turn your attention back to that precious guide before you. We know that they know what we need to know, what we need to learn, what we need to do to become one who can help this other in this deep and ultimate way. And so we ask them, please teach us that. And they are so happy that we've asked. Of course, they agree. Our gratitude arises. We want to offer them something exquisite. And so we think of a perfect world. They are teaching us how to create. We imagine we can hold it in our hands. And we offer it to them, following it with our promise to try to practice what they teach us, using our refuge prayer to make the promise. Here is the great earth, filled with fragrant incense and covered with a blanket of flowers. The great mountain, 4 lands, wearing the jewel of the sun and the moon. In my mind, I make this the paradise of a Buddha and offer it all to you. By this deed, may every living being experience the pure world. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnirya Tayami. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest community. Through the merit that I do in sharing this class and the rest, may we all reach Buddhahood for the sake of every living being. Okay. So welcome. I see so many new names to me, and I hope I can serve you. I hope I will bring you what you're hoping for. I have some like background and housekeeping for this first class. So I'm just gonna jump right in. But I do soon want to get to know you and where you are. And but we'll get to that later, okay? So this is Asian Classics Institute series on the principles of Buddhism. It's the first of 18 courses that were taught by Geshe Michael Roach in the 1990s in New York City as his method of studying for his Geshe degree. So the Geshe degree is an oral debate, that takes a series of them and then culmination in like a week-long big debate that finishes 20 years of study from the monastic tradition of the Tibetan tradition of Mahayana Buddhism. So this is not an overview program, and it's not a let's get inspired program. It is the basis of what is taught in the monastic tradition, serious practitioners, that has grown and evolved since Lord Buddha's time. So, 2,500 years in the making. But specifically evolved within the Tibetan tradition. So Tibet legally is Western region of China. It still has the term Tibet. So just understand that when I say Tibet, I'm not being, politically rejecting the situation. It's still historically that area. For a lot of reasons, the Buddhist tradition in Tibet stayed very, very insular because, mainly the geography and the culture, but it allowed it to become very, very precise, or to stay very precise, because it had so little modern influence, right, as we moved into the industrial age, right, in the 1800s, 1900s. So we have this really precise and authoritative, in the terms of lineage, a pure lineage, that Geshe Michael's circumstances allowed to become so readily available to the Western world, the modern world. And his gift among many was to make it so user-friendly that somebody like me could go on to be able to share it with people. So when those courses first began, there was a young man named John Stillwell that was part of that group who knew a young lady named Ellie Vanderpas who lived in California. And Ellie asked John, would you ask that guy to record those teachings for me? Otherwise, it hadn't occurred to them to record the teaching. So, okay, let's record. And then because it was recorded, it was then available to be repeated. Right? And it became a teacher training course, actually, the 18 course series. I know that when I first started teaching the courses was far, far, far from my mind. But pretty soon we see that, oh my gosh, to share these with others is like the greatest gift for being able to come to understand them better and use them better myself. And so when opportunities came up, you know, Sarahni, would you share that class with me? Sure, I'll just bring my notes. I'll go through them with you. And that planted seeds, right? And those seeds grew. And, you know, here we are. So these 18 courses, in the Tibetan tradition, we would be assigned to memorize the text we are studying first. And then we would receive the teacher's commentary on what we've memorized. And then we would take it to the debate park and study it by way of debate. I am really glad that Geshe Michael did not make that requirement, because I would have said, okay, no thanks. But he understood that that method of reviewing the material multiple times and sharing it with other people is how we learn best. So he designed a system that was more suitable to the West, a system that has homeworks and quizzes and a final exam and a meditation assignment, really a contemplation. And then later he added a talk to somebody else about it component. So I have a few requirements. I'm going to call it a requirement. Stronger than a request. And that is, I ask that you come to class on time, so you don't miss that opening session part, right? It's designed to prepare our heart, to connect our mind and heart, so that when we hear what's coming next, we'll hear it in a deeper way. I ask that if possible, you have your video on, because then that puts you up here on my screen, right? And it's really helpful for me to be able to see your faces. I ask that you not read the reading before you've received the class on the reading, but then very soon after class, look at the reading, do your homework. Do the homework with the reading, with the student notes, with your friends if you want, right? Open book, we call it. Then take your answers and look at the answer key and compare, right? So you've done the homework, you've reviewed it by grading it. And I don't mean grading, I mean compare. Think about the answer key. Think about, right, the subtleties between your understanding and what the answer key seems to say. And mark your own paper. So if you leave a whole question blank, take off 5 points. If you get something a little bit wrong, just take off a half or 1. Be nice to yourself. Give yourself a mark, 98. Happy face, right? Then study your answer the next day. Study your answers, study the answer key, put it all away, and take the quiz. So the quiz is closed book. Then compare the quiz to the answer key. Right? The quiz always comes off the homework. Then be sure that you've done the meditation assignment at least once for each class and write down the date and time of your meditation. On your homework, however they do that grading sheet. The homework without a meditation will not be accepted. And they're serious about that. So you keep track, you keep your grades, and then at the end, class 11 is always the review of the final exam. So we go through each question. So you know what's going to be on it. And at the end of the course, we will together decide on a date by which you will have completed your final exam. Then I ask for the final exam, somebody else grade your paper. But we need a system in which that gets finished by a certain date so that you can be complete before we start course 2. So I really want those who come to course 2 to have completed their course 1, because I don't want you to waste your time here. It's wasting karma. It's a huge goodness, right? Your goodness creates these classes and we're using it up and we're making more. And the way we make more, right, is to complete it, right? So there are completion, we want completion seeds, right from the beginning. And we'll see why as we learn if you stay, right? With me or others, you don't have to do all these courses with me if you don't want. But I encourage, right? If this system suits you, if the material seems to suit you, to go along, right? Because the courses build on each other. Each one is separate and can be taken separately. But when you do them in a string, right, they all piece together so beautifully. And we don't even see it till we get till the end, okay, and look back. All right. So I will ask you to show me your paper, your homework and quiz. If it's on your phone, just hold your phone up at the beginning of class. If you actually did hard copy, show it to me. Somehow show me, please. Okay? Okay. All right. And if this doesn't turn out to be your interest, feel free, right? Thank you so much. Not for me. Okay. It's okay. So Geshe-la's intention in sharing this material years ago was his wish for all beings to find happiness, where happiness really comes from. So although these classes are very intellectual, they're all designed to help us open our hearts to see how we can be personally contributing to the increased happiness of our world. So sometimes I lose that message, right, in the details. So help me remember. As I said, this is a Tibetan lineage, a Tibetan tradition. And I believe you're probably aware that the Tibetan language is being lost. And yet there is a huge collection of Buddhist scriptures that were very carefully translated into Tibetan many, many years ago. And it's the most complete collection that is known to exist. So, I've been studying this for an embarrassing number of years and still am not able to read, speak Tibetan. But to plant seeds, I will share the Tibetan, not the script, but the letters. And I'll say the words, and I'll ask you to repeat the words, even though I won't be able to hear you, just to plant seeds in our minds for somebody to be able to continue to read those texts and to translate those texts. And if it turns out that, oh my gosh, you've got seeds for Tibetan, hallelujah, right? I know who to introduce you to, right? And we can get you on track for becoming a Tibetan reader, at least. It would be great. But I apologize for my ineffectiveness in Tibetan. All right, that said, oh my gosh, that took too long. Let's learn about what we're going to learn. The first class of each of these courses is always the text, the authors, like what's coming up, right? So this first course is called Principles, the Three Principle Path. So here we go. Here's my high-tech show, my high-tech, like I'm supposed to have a visual aid. Here it is. Can you read it? Can you see it? Lam so nam sum. Lam so nam sum. There, you just spoke Tibetan. Yay! Lam so nam sum. Lam means path. We'll talk about it more. Sum means three, the number three. Nam sum means principles. In English, there's the word principle and there's the word principle. Principle, P-L-E, and principle, P-A-L. Sorry, translators. And I get them confused all the time. But this Lamso Namsum, the three principal paths of Buddhist practice, means the three most important concepts, the three necessary concepts for progress on our spiritual path. It doesn't mean three qualities of our Buddhist teaching. It's three separate realizations that we will come to on our journey. So when we say path, lam, it does have the connotation that we're going somewhere. We're going from being ignorant, suffering human being, struggling to get happiness and doing all the wrong things, trying to get it, to being a being who is a manifestation of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom. It does seem like we need to go from here to there, but it actually is not like that. So path, lam, also means something that has become real that wasn't real before for us. A realization. So a realization isn't just, oh, I get it. An intellectual realization is only part of it. The experiential realization is what makes something real for us. Like if you've never ridden a bicycle, you could watch all the videos in the world about how to ride a bicycle and be expert at explaining to somebody how to ride a bicycle, but you've never actually done it yourself. So until you get on the bicycle and ride it, you don't have the realization of riding the bicycle, even though you might be like the smartest person in the world about riding bicycles. Do you see? So alam means making things real. There are three main principal things that need to become real. And that's what our journey, our practices are about. And that's what the whole series of the 18 classes and 6 practice modules help us cultivate these realizations, making things real. Okay, so we'll learn more about them. We are studying this specific lineage. The founder of which is a man we call Tsongkhapa. His monk's name is Lobsang Drakpa. So please say Tsongkhapa Lobsang Drakpa. And his dates are 1357 to 1419. It's like somehow in these courses, Tsongkhapa's name becomes Tsongkhapa 1357 to 1419. It's like you can't say his name without saying his dates. if you listen to Geshe-la's audio. But stop and think for a minute. In your culture, what was going on in the late 1300s? My country wasn't even born yet. Just an interesting thought. We'll learn more about Tsongkhapa as we go along. His birth was special. By the age of 7, he's already studying with great masters. As a teen, he's already debating with other scholars. He goes on to have some really special students that were themselves already teachers. And his gift was that he could see that there had been some degeneration in the thinking about emptiness and karma. And like things just didn't make sense. And he made it his job to check, to see what was mistaken. And he went to the trouble to learn Sanskrit. He went to the trouble to dig out what Sanskrit texts were available. He went to the trouble to debate with other teachers, right? He was the founder of the Gelugpa lineage. So there is no Gelugpa at his time. He's studying with the other lineage of Tibet, Nyingma, Shakya, Kagyu. He has the main one, but he's learning from the others because he's comparing. And comparing it all with the Indian tradition of Nagarjuna, Shantideva, okay? The ones that came before. And through the method of debate, it's a very keen and precise method of weeding out what isn't accurate, isn't correct. So debate is not competition. It's a precise carving away of what's not right to reveal what is. And so that was his gift. He did that with the teachings. And as a result, people were like, wow. And they followed him. And then they taught what he taught. And that's how a lineage starts. Right? He didn't set up, I'm going to start a lineage. Right? So we call him J Tsongkhapa because J means Lord. It's an honorific to remind ourselves that he was a pretty special guy. So that tradition, I wrote it down for us. Here it is. Disregard the stuff above. Here's Gelugpa. Please say Gelugpa. And all of Tibet is what's called the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism. Sorry, it's wibbly here. Mahayana is a Sanskrit term. And often we just go back and forth between Tibetan and Sanskrit. So just to get clear, there's Buddhism. And within Tibet, there are 4 different traditions. One of those traditions is Gelugpa. All of those traditions are called Mahayana, great vehicle. And we're going to learn all of this, right? In detail, you might not really want to know. So Lama Tsongkhapa wrote many, many, many books. One of his greatest is actually called the Great Book on the Steps of the Path, Lamrim Chenmo. We'll write that later when it comes up later. It's really long and it's really complicated and it's really detailed. And Geshe Michael's teaching its wisdom chapters after he finishes Pabonka Rinpoche's text, right? So it's coming up probably in the next 5 years. But it's too long for most people. So he wrote a shorter one and a shorter one and a really short one, which is the one we're studying, the Lamso Namsum, right? It's a 14 stanza prayer, letter, actually, to one of his students as an instruction for what that student, an outline for that student to teach to the people in this outlying area that he was in. So when we understand what the whole process of going from suffering being to ultimately happy being entails, it is all included in these 14 verses. So it's the kind of text that the first time we go through, it's like, yeah, I get it. And then, you take 5 more courses, and then you go back and go, oh, wow, now I really get it. Yeah. And then you study some more and like, oh man, how did I miss that before? Right? The more we know, the more it's revealed out of this beautiful prayer. So, just to look into the future, you may find it useful to memorize this 14 verse prayer. You're welcome to memorize it in your own language. Because then we have it rattling around inside there. I don't assign it for a class, right, requirement to memorize. I will just put in my 2 cents. Okay. So what are these 3? 5:43. We take a break at 6. Okay. Realizations that through which we become fully enlightened being, right? So I'll use the term becoming Buddha from time to time, and I'll use the term fully enlightened being, and I'll use the term angel because Geshe Michael uses angel. And whatever that means to you now, allow yourself to open up and learn more about what we mean by that. Right now, just keep this ideal in mind, a being who can help others in that deep and ultimate way. So Here's the three in the Tibetan. Nyenjun. Can you see it well enough to say it? Nyenjun, Jongsem, and Yongdak Peitawa. Nenjun, Jongsem, and Yongdak Peitawa. There, that's a little better. Got it? Okay, so these are the three. In those three is our entire 18 ACI courses. Okay, so Nyenjun means renunciation. It's this first state of mind that we will have that starts us on our search, on our journey, right? From suffering being to totally enlightened being. Of course, there are many levels, and we'll talk about it again and again. Geshe-la likes to say, renunciation is when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired of nothing working out right. Okay. When we finally figure out that nothing I do works to bring me the happiness I want, even the good things wear out, there must be something wrong with this picture. Right? A level of renunciation. Traditionally, renunciation means give up the home life, go become a monastic. But that's not necessarily renunciation. You could give up the home life and go become a monastic in order to escape your debt. That's not renunciation, that's right, running away. So again, we'll learn renunciation. And my own experience is, I thought I had it. And then, oh my gosh, there's more to it. And then as I get deeper and deeper, like the thing I really am trying to renunciate is my ignorance. And I tell you what, that's a slippery devil. So at whatever level we've become dissatisfied with life, I mean, it's like being a Debbie Downer, right? Get dissatisfied with life so that we can make the change we need to make. Okay? Renunciation. Second thing to become real, Jongsem. It means literally, it means Buddhahood mind. But that, of course, is the goal, right? To make our Buddhahood mind. But in this, along this, our path, along our journey, the realization is the realization that we can and will transform ourselves into this being of ultimate love, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom. And so this Jongsem is growing that wish, that aspiration to become that. And growing the aspiration to become that helps us actually become that. And so this is talking about the aspiration, which requires that we have some idea of what that goal will be like in order to aspire to it, right? We don't aspire to things we don't know anything about. And we don't aspire to things that will bring us suffering. I mean, ignorantly we do, but we aspire for things that will bring us happiness. And when I say us, I don't mean limited to just me. I mean us, everybody. And then the third one, yang dakpe tawa, it means correct worldview. It means understanding where happiness really comes from. So it means understanding the marriage of what we call karma and emptiness. And that means understanding the pen thing and the two husbands in the kitchen thing and the two-headed purple elephant thing, right? That maybe you've heard those stories, maybe you haven't. We'll get there. Correct worldview is this understanding that to tell a little white lie to get the advantage in a business deal, if it does seem to get us the advantage, we have been misled by our own mind. Correct worldview sees that a good result of getting the advantage in a business deal can only come from some similar goodness done in the past. And to tell a lie is going to result in someone lying to me, which is unpleasant. So an unpleasant deed cannot bring a pleasant result. And correct worldview understands that so precisely that we reach a place sooner or later where we can't do something unkind to get a good result for ourselves. We just can no longer do it. Meanwhile, right, before we get to that level, we still make mistakes. We're on automatic pilot so often. So we use our intellect to learn and relearn the principles of laws of cause and effect, to recognize what we think is cause and effect, to show us that it can't really be that way, to show us, well, what really is cause and effect, and what kinds of behaviors then to train ourselves in that will be the behaviors that become the causes for a future that's beautiful and happy for everyone. So we learn through these courses the details of that yang dakpe tawa. is there are many levels, right, that we'll find ourselves going through as we understand. We can study the highest worldview and get it intellectually. And then our task is to grow this keen awareness as we're interacting with others, to recognize I'm not functioning from that level. I'm functioning from lowest level understanding emptiness, which isn't a bad thing at all, because mostly we're not even there. But right, without knowing the different levels, our awareness can't pick up how we're making our choices of behavior. And what we come to see actually is how personally powerful we are. Like, it's a little uncomfortable to use that word because it can be abused, right? But we really are the ones in charge of our world. It's just that the one who's in charge of the one who's in charge, it misunderstands. So get that one on board, and it's not so difficult after all to apply all of this. And so we learn the details, the very specific details in this series of courses, that our task then is to apply to our own behavior in order to transform our experiences. All right. Okay, let's take a break. And we'll talk about our lineage. Okay, so take a few minutes to get refreshed, especially give the translators a break. They're working so hard.
Morning, dear Lama.
Hi, Roxana.
Sorry to be late. I thought it was at 6 o'clock in the morning. Got the schedules confused.
Okay.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. Why did I get hosted all of a sudden? Put me back where I can see you all. There. We have 3 screens. Thanks, Tracy. Yay, Lucia and Camelia. Is it going okay? There's Camellia. Yay, good, great, thank you. Are we ready? Okay, so our the text we'll be studying was written by Jetson Kappa Lobsang Drakpa 1357 to 1419. Your course materials also has reading, and that reading is a commentary on Jetson Kappa's 14 stanzas. And that commentary is from a teaching given by someone whose title is Pabonka Rinpoche. He's known by his title more than by his monk's name that I don't even recall. He has a secret name, Dechen Ningpo, that I don't know why we know his secret name and we don't know anybody else's secret name. But Pabonka Rinpoche, Dechen Ningpo, many of you are probably familiar with, because that man also taught teachings that became a book called Liberation Thrust into the Palm of Your Hand, which Geshe Michael's been teaching to us over the past, heavens, 13 years, right? Long time. There it is. Okay, so Pabonka Rinpoche, I didn't write the Dechen Ningpo, we'll learn that later. Pabonka means great or big rock. Rinpoche means precious one. Usually it indicates a reincarnate being, but not always. Here it does. Pabonka Rinpoche, his dates, I want to say 1842, but I wasn't sure, so I put question marks. No, not 1842, 1872, I think. I'm not sure. To 1941, that I know for sure. Pabonka Rinpoche. He was from Gyalrong House of Sarahni Monastery. He was a geshe, but not a particularly high level geshe. But he had the gift of being able to teach to the public and inspire them to practice. He got some grief for it, but he really helped people. He was bold enough to go outside the monastery and teach. He had many amazing students, one of which is Trijang Rinpoche. His dates 1900 to 1981. Trijang Rinpoche is one of the men who tutored our current Dalai Lama when he was a young boy. So that means he was amongst the, best of the best, the cream of the crop, to be chosen to teach the Dalai Lama. He had many amazing students, of course, one of which was a man whose title, or what people called him, was Ken Rinpoche. His monk's name and title, Serme Geshe Lobsang Tarchin. His dates 1921 to 2004. Okay. Ken Rinpoche. When you hear Geshe Michael talking about Ken Rinpoche, this is who he's talking about. Ken Rinpoche had students, one of which Geshe Michael wrote, okay, whose Geshe degree, like Pabonka Rinpoche's, is a Geshe degree from Gelrong House Sarahni. So I study from Geshe Michael. You'll learn about me later. You're studying from me. Puts us in this lineage, right? That goes all the way back. We could trace it back, right? Directly to Jetson Kappa, right? Like we did a family tree, right? I'm not sure what Jetson Kappa would be. How many greats you have to go back for Jetson Kappa to be our great grandpa? Okay. So what it means to be in a lineage is that as a student of that lineage, we've opened ourselves up to receive. And the teacher that we're receiving from has done the same thing, to receive from a teacher before them who's done the same thing. Okay. And so this pouring from pitcher to pitcher to pitcher to pitcher is how the wheel turns. Okay. The turning of the wheel of the Dharma. And we think, oh, when that being dies, they stop pouring. But I think we'll come to see sooner or later that no, they're still pouring into us and being poured into. Right? And technically, there's no first pitcher, right? We'll get there someday too. But then that means we're now a pitcher that's getting poured into. And I don't know, let's say the pitcher is, if it gets full and we don't like tip it into somebody else, it stops getting added to, right? So we need to kind of tilt the pitcher so that it keeps pouring out, so it keeps pouring in. So right now, right, you're the pitcher filling up. But make sure you're on a little bit of a tilt so that when it's appropriate, when it's time, you share. So later, Geshe Michael built that into the coursework where we would have the assignment, share it with somebody, go sit down and talk about this with somebody and write that down on your homework too. The early classes don't have that. But I think one of the options in the ACI platform is to give you an opportunity to connect with each other if you wish. But from my perspective, don't feel obligated to do that. I'm just sharing that it really helps. All right. So who wrote our book? Jatson Kappa, 1357 to 1419. Who wrote the commentary? Pabonka Rinpoche. Okay. That's who we're studying. Now, Jatson Kappa, by the time he's in his midlife, he has students. And he's wanting to establish monasteries in his tradition. And so he said to his students, I need somebody to go out and build monasteries. Who will do it? And we were having this class yesterday. Not I said the pig, not I said the cow, right? The little red hen story. And, nobody's volunteering. And finally, this one student who wasn't particularly, he didn't stand out, right? Kind of a background student. He said, I'll do it. So he left the group. He was far away in Eastern Tibet, trying to develop monasteries, which meant teaching people. And he said, how do I do this? What do I teach? And Jatson Kappa wrote what became the Lamso Namsum. It actually is in the Lamrim Chemo, but he took it out and he wrote this letter to this student and said, here, right, teach them this. Like use this as the outline for beginners. And then go back and fill in the details if they stay interested. So that man's name is Nawang Drakpa. Nawang Drakpa Sako Wangpo. Sako Wangpo. Sako is the area of Tibet he was from. Wangpo means power guy. So I don't know how he got that name. The power guy from Sako. In the reading, he's called the friar from Sako. Friar. I'm not really sure what that means. I associate it with a level of like Christian teacher or a friar, like a monk or I don't know what that word means. But this guy from Tsako gets sent out to East Tibet to build monasteries and teach. And he was instructed to use the Lomso Nomsum as his foundation teachings. So that's why we're studying, do you see? Building our foundation for our spiritual path, if that's what serves you. All right, so each homework has a meditation assignment. Think of it as a contemplation assignment at this level, unless you already know how to meditate. I think it just says 5 minutes, but it takes 10 minutes to get clear and focused for your 5 minutes. So carve out 15 minutes in your morning if you're not already doing it, and sit down, bring your attention inward. Think of that precious guide, whoever has popped into your mind about love, compassion, wisdom. Ask them to help you with insights on this topic, and then just think about it. So that first one has to do with renunciation. And so the task is just to think to yourself, what do I think renunciation means? What did Sarahni say it meant? Does that resonate with me? What is it I don't like about my world, my life? Do I really believe I can change it? Just think about it. You don't even have to come to any particular conclusion. If you do, great. You might want to start a habit of just jotting something down. Keeping a meditation journal can be really helpful, can also be hugely distracting. But you just write, the day, the time, the topic, and maybe just, 1 to 10, 10 being, wow, that was a spectacular session. 1 was, I never actually found my object. 2, 3, and just a little aha. All right, so I haven't said anything about renunciation yet. So that's why I brought it up for your meditation. Our introduction to considering developing renunciation is a topic called the four sufferings, or there's the 4 sufferings, the 4 great sufferings, excuse me. They are called Kega Nachi. So a little more Tibetan. Look at your Tibetan speakers already. Ke ga na chi. Ke ga na chi. It means rebirth, meaning forced rebirth, aging, illness, and death. The four great sufferings the four great sufferings are being forced into a rebirth, getting old, getting sick, dying. So growing renunciation we start with just looking at these four. And I don't know, my culture doesn't even believe in forced rebirth. So, right, at the beginning, I just sat that one aside and looked at aging, illness, and death. Are those suffering? That seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? It is no fun to get old. When I was first studying this stuff, I was in my 40s. And somebody in their 70s, like I had lots of friends in their 70s, 80s, 90s. But I realize now I didn't have a clue at what it was like to have that perspective of being that age. I thought I did, but now that I'm there, it's like, whoa, there's like so much good stuff about being older. It's amazing, really. It's like, I'm supposed to go, oh, wow, I'm getting older. But it's like, nah, there's some really great things about being older. There's a lot of yuck too. But think about it. And then, later, as we get more sophisticated, we'll even start thinking about, well, is it really necessary to get old? The answer is no. Right? Because what we mean by old isn't related to age. So anyway, illness, go to illness. Is it unpleasant to be sick? I think that's a universal yes, but there's some people that do get advantages from being sick. And then dying. Long story on dying. But the point is, if any of that is unpleasant, are we resigned to that's just life and I need to make the best of it? Or is there something inside of us that's nagging, that says there's something wrong with this picture? Does it really have to be like this? Is it possible to change it? Is it possible to know something different, to be something different? Just explore your heart. Explore your heart. Don't really even come to any conclusions yet. Has something happened in life that's already shown you that you want something else? I mean, I'm going to assume the answer is yes, because you're here in this class. People's stories are amazing and fascinating about what starts them on their path. And when we first are in that story, it's terrible. And years later, we look back and it's like the worst thing that happened to me was the best thing that happened to me. Because without it, I don't think I'd be here. But you can't say that to somebody who's in the midst of it. Okay? We can only help them through it. So investigate renunciation. The idea is to come to recognize that we are in fact experiencing these 4 great sufferings. We just accepted them as that's how it had to be. And yet something has shown us that that's a mistake. So at some point, we are growing more correct worldview meets up with our renunciation, growing renunciation. And we have this sense of, I'm gonna step in completely, right? I'm gonna dedicate myself to learning more. We can go that far. I'm gonna try this on for size. And our next question then is, like, what do I need to do to be a good student? Like, what do I need to do to be effective in my learning this material? So I don't mean good, bad, that kind of thing, but in terms of, tell me what to do so that these teachings can really help me. So they tell us, well, don't be a student with the 3 problems of the pot. The 3 problems of the pot. It means if we have a teapot and it has 1 or more of these 3 problems, you can't use the teapot as a teapot. You can't make tea in the teapot. So as a student, if we have these 3 problems of the teapot, even if we come to class and do our homeworks, we won't make tea, right? We won't change. So the 3 problems of the pot. The first one is listening to the teachings like a pot with the lid on. So you can't pour hot water into a teapot with its lid on. As a student receiving teachings, we want our lid open so they can pour in. When I was a kid, there was a TV advertisement of this drawing character, and he cracks his head open and they pour something in. And I love that image, just like, pour the wisdom into me, Lama. It means not paying close attention. I always need to take notes when I listen because it makes me like connect the dot. It doesn't mean that's for everyone, but find the method that makes you stay focused. Have an open mind. Second problem of the pot is listening to the teachings with an ignoble motivation. That's a weird word. With a with a wrong motivation, a lower motivation, such as for one's own reputation, or just because everybody's doing it, or, you know, a wrong purpose. It's like the teapot being full of grime. Then the third problem of the pot is taking teachings like a pot with the bottom fallen out. Meaning you would pour the water in and it would just like all over the place. It's not contained. So problem of the pot, third one for a student, is taking teachings but not making effort to retain the information. This is the one that's hardest for me. That's why Geshe-Michael has built in the reviewing it at least 3 times. Apparently, that's what our brains need, is at least 3 reviews of it. My personal brain needs about 9 reviews of it. I'm just a slow study and always have been. Yeah, the teapot with the grime is listening with the wrong motivation. Tracy. You know, one thing I noticed about myself, not in this tradition, but in other teachings that I've attended, was that I'd be listening to the program, trying to use it to match or verify something I already know, right? Like I'm listening to the new thing for confirmation of something I know already. And I recognize that that's a big blocker for me for actually getting something new out of whatever I was listening to. Because I was just saying that doesn't match, that doesn't match, that doesn't match, that does. And I didn't pay attention to all that other stuff. So I don't know, if I find myself doing that, I suspect others do that. And I didn't know I was doing it until I had studied this stuff enough to become more aware of things. So it's part of this, you know, grime in the pot. I have this preconceived idea that I want the teachings to match. And these teachings don't match anything I'd ever learned before. But they do match something like my heart knew was true. And so I stuck with it, even though it was like, well, I don't get it. Okay, all right. So then once we've determined to be a student with none of those pot problems, then they say, let's consider what level of teachings appeals to us. What level of teachings are we ready for? And there are 3 great divisions of the Lamrim. They're called the 3 scopes. The lower scope is where our motivation is to escape future lower rebirths, which would mean we would need to believe in rebirth and the possibility of lower rebirth, which I'm not saying is true or not true, but to even get onto a serious path as a Buddhist with a little b, we do need to have some concern about what happens at the end of this life. If all we're concerned about is what's happening in this life, we can use the principles of karma and emptiness for a better this life, but that's not being on our spiritual path, right? Our spiritual path is addressing that part of us that always is, always has been, and has not yet been ultimately happy, but is capable of that. So we'll talk about how to consider whether or not to believe in past and future lifetimes. And we'll talk about what those past and future lifetimes can be like if they are true. And to believe that, oh, they're going to be at least as good as this one, no matter what, is a missed opportunity to motivate ourselves to make the changes that we're professing to want to make. So later classes, later courses, we learn how to really dig into that more deeply to come to our own conclusion about it. If we did truly believe that we could have a rebirth as an animal, would it motivate us to do something to try to prevent that from happening? You know, people say, oh, I'd love to come back as an eagle. But I don't know, think about it carefully. So again, it's a little premature because we don't quite have enough information. But this class is just about, think about it. Second scope, medium scope, is that we've understood about future lifetimes. We've understood about closing the door to lesser rebirth, meaning making it such that it can't happen anymore. And we've understood about mental afflictions and where they come from and how it's possible to stop them, to stop perpetuating them until we have no more of them. And at this level, our understanding is such that it seems like that's the highest evolution I can achieve, is this state of my own personal freedom from suffering. Right? It's a level where we don't understand yet how our own personal experience includes others. They're them, I'm me. I can reach my own personal nirvana, and I'm gonna go for it, right? It doesn't mean you're, rude and unkind and uncaring of others. We just don't have that capacity to believe that I can help them do it too. Right? The capacity is I've got to do it myself to reach nirvana, believing that that's the final evolution. You see, if we're in a Mahayana tradition, we're already beyond that probably. But we still need to learn the details. Right? So medium level scope practitioner aspires to nirvana as the goal. It's not the end goal. It's not also omniscient. So they say you'll eventually come up. Anyway, never mind. Greater scope. Greater scope recognizes that understanding emptiness and the law of cause and effect is true for everybody, and recognizing that every conscious being just wants happiness, and it motivates everything they do, and everything they do to try to get that happiness is mistaken. So it's never going to bring them the happiness they want. You know, our heart just twists. And it's like, if it's unnecessary for me, it's unnecessary for them. So, you know, I want everybody to know. I want everybody. That's the beginning of our greater vehicle. That grows into, oh, I see how it actually is my responsibility, right? The Laksam Namdak, who is in Lamrim recently, personal responsibility, because it's all my projected reality. So I can, in fact, bring them all to ultimate happiness. But it's a big leap, isn't it? From my own nirvana to every existing being's nirvana is my responsibility. It's too big, right? Even now I hear myself say it and it's like, ooh, like this weight on my shoulders. But it's because of my ignorance and my selfishness that still asserts itself, right? There's also a little piece in my heart that goes, yes, right? I know I meant to do that. Right? This life or future one, right? What's our carrying capacity? Is it just close the doors to lesser rebirth so I get human or better? Is my carrying capacity, oh, just me to reach nirvana? Or is my carrying capacity every being? You know, every being. When we have in mind, right, when our carrying capacity is in our mind as we do our deeds, opening the door for somebody. If our carrying capacity is to close the door of lesser rebirth, that kindness contributes to that result. If our underlying carrying capacity is me reaching my nirvana, holding the door for the person is a kindness that contributes to my nirvana. If my carrying capacity is to bring everybody to their full awakening, ultimate happiness, the opening the door contributes to my seeds for that result. You see? So we're learning the principles that will help us grow our understanding so that our carrying capacity will grow. We can't say to somebody, just grow your carrying capacity huge. If it doesn't resonate in our hearts, if we don't have the seeds for it, there's nothing I can say that will make you have it. But my task is to, keep talking to try to find those seeds in you, because you must have them because you're in a class that's going to teach about it. It's like circular, isn't it? Geshe uses the analogy, are we a VW bug car? You know what I mean by that? Little car. Or am I a van, medium capacity? Or am I one of those huge double trailer, Mack trucks, diesel trucks? That's like a train going down the road. What's my carrying capacity? We can't say to a VW, just be like a huge truck. Yeah, you can only get so many packages in the VW. So we're growing our capacity. All right, perfect timing. I'm going to read to you the 3 principal paths prayer. And then at the beginning of each class, I will read it again. So hopefully it's going to get more and more familiar. So just listen to it. Let it sink in. And then you have it in your reading. Okay. I need to change glasses. Okay. Ready? So, problem of the pot. Open the lid. Scrub the pot. Glue the cracks on the bottom. Here comes 3 principal paths by Jetsun Kappa Lobsang Drakpa. His instruction to Wangpo Tsako about what to use to teach people out there in the boondocks. I bow to all the high and holy lamas. As far as I am able, I will explain the essence of all high teachings of the victors. The path that all their holy sons commend. The entry point for the fortunate seeking freedom. Listen with a pure mind. Fortunate ones who have no craving for the pleasures of life and who, to make leisure and fortune meaningful, strive to turn their minds to the path which pleases the victors. There is no way to end without pure renunciation. This striving for pleasant results in the ocean of life. It is because of their hankering life as well that beings are fettered. So seek renunciation first. Leisure and fortune are hard to find. Life is not long. Think it constantly. Stop desire for this life. Think over and over how deeds and their fruits never fail. And the cycle is suffering. stop desire for the future. When you have meditated thus and feel not even a moment's wish for the good things of cyclic life, and when you begin to think both night and day of achieving freedom, you have found renunciation. Renunciation, though, can never bring the total bliss of matchless Buddhahood. Unless it is bound by the purest wish. And so the wise seek the high wish for enlightenment. They are swept along on 4 fierce river currents. Chained up tight in past deeds, hard to undo. Stuffed in a steel cage of grasping self. Smothered in pitch black ignorance. In limitless rounds they are born. And in their births are tortured by 3 sufferings without a break. Think how your mothers feel. Think of what's happening to them. Try to develop this highest wish. You may master renunciation and the wish. But unless you have the wisdom perceiving reality, you cannot cut the root of cyclic life. Make efforts in ways then to perceive interdependence. A person has entered the path that pleases the Buddhas. When for all objects in the cycle or beyond, they see that cause and effect can never fail. And when for them, they lose all solid appearance. You have yet to realize the thought of the able. As long as 2 ideas seem to you disparate, The appearance of things, infallible interdependence, and emptiness beyond taking any position. At some point, they no longer alternate. Come together. Just seeing that interdependence never fails brings realization that destroys how you hold to objects. And then your analysis with view is complete. In addition, the appearance prevents the existence extreme and emptiness, that of non-existence. And if you see how emptiness shows in cause and effect, you will never be stolen off by extreme views. When you have grasped, as well as I, the essential points of each of the three principal paths explained, then go into isolation, my child. Make mighty efforts and quickly win your ultimate wish. All right. So remember that person we wanted to be able to help at the beginning of class? We've learned something that we will use sooner or later to help them in that deep and ultimate way. And that's a great, great goodness. So be happy with yourself. Think of this goodness like a beautiful glowing gemstone that you can hold in your hands. Recall that precious being, the one you called before you. Grow your gratitude to them. Ask them to please, please stay close. To continue to guide you and inspire you. And then offer them this gemstone of goodness. See them accept it and bless it. And they carry it with them right back into your heart. Feel them there in that holy of holies in the middle of your chest. their love, their compassion, their wisdom. Maybe a tiny tingle or a warm glow. It feels so good, we want to keep it forever. And so we share it by the power of the goodness that we've just done. May all beings complete the collection of merit and wisdom, and thus gain the two ultimate bodies that merit and wisdom make. So use 3 long exhales. The first to share this goodness with that one person. The second to share it with everyone you love. The third to share it with every existing being everywhere. See them all filled with happiness, filled with wisdom. Sharing it with others. And may it be so. Okay. 1 minute overtime, please forgive me. So I beg you, please do your homework. Do your quiz. I will see you Thursday morning and we'll do this again.
Thank you, dear Lama.
Okay, thanks everyone for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Have a lovely week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.